What happens during a police welfare check? That's exactly what we'll discuss today. Let's begin.
It's 2:17 in the morning. Your phone is dead. You fell asleep on the couch. Then somebody knocks on your door. Not a friend, not a neighbor, the police. And they aren't there because you committed a crime. They're there because somebody thinks something might have happened to you. That moment catches people completely off guard because most Americans think a welfare check is simple. A quick visit, a few questions, a polite goodbye. Sometimes that's exactly what happens, sometimes it isn't, and the difference can change everything. The hidden fear most people never say out loud is this: what if someone else decides I'm in danger when I'm not? And here's the truth most people never hear. A welfare check is not really about investigating a crime. It's about determining whether an emergency exists. The second officers believe there may be an immediate threat to life or safety, the situation can change fast. So what actually happens during a police welfare check in the United States? Let's walk through it. Imagine your family hasn't heard from you for 2 days. Calls go unanswered. Messages stay unread. You normally respond within minutes. A worried relative calls police. Most people assume officers will simply note the concern and leave. In reality, officers are expected to attempt contact. They may knock, call your phone, speak with neighbors, look for signs that someone is home. If you answer the door and appear fine, many welfare checks end right there. A short conversation, a few questions, case closed. But now imagine something different. The officers knock, nobody answers. A car is in the driveway, lights are on, mail is piling up. A relative says this behavior is completely out of character. This is where many people misunderstand the law. People assume police can never enter without a warrant. That is not always true. If officers have an objectively reasonable belief that someone inside may be injured or facing imminent harm, courts have recognized emergency exceptions that can allow entry without a warrant. The focus is not criminal evidence. The focus is saving life. Think about it from the officer's perspective. If somebody is unconscious inside a house, waiting hours for paperwork could cost a life. That's why emergency aid exceptions exist. Now let's look at a situation that has become increasingly common: mental health concerns. A friend receives alarming text messages. A family member talks about hopelessness. Someone disappears after making statements that suggest self-harm. Police are called. Many people assume that if they haven't broken a law, nothing can happen. Reality is more complicated. Officers responding to a welfare check are trying to determine whether there is an immediate risk. If they reasonably believe someone poses a serious danger to themselves or others, state laws may allow emergency mental health evaluations. The exact process varies by state, but the purpose is intervention, not punishment. That distinction matters because people often react defensively. They think they are being accused. Sometimes officers are trying to determine whether medical help is needed instead. Now consider another scenario. An elderly parent lives alone. Neighbors notice newspapers accumulating. Nobody has seen them for days. A welfare check is requested. This happens thousands of times across America every year. Most end harmlessly. Sometimes officers discover a medical emergency. Sometimes they find someone who fell and couldn't reach a phone. Sometimes they find a person confused, dehydrated, or in need of immediate care. Those cases rarely make headlines, but they are one reason welfare checks exist. Here's where things become legally interesting. For years, some courts allowed broad arguments that police performing community caretaking functions could enter homes. Then came a case called Caniglia v. Strom. The case started after a welfare check involving concerns about a man's safety. The dispute eventually reached the United States Supreme Court. In 2021, the court unanimously rejected the idea that community caretaking creates a broad exception, allowing police to enter homes without constitutional limits. That decision surprised many people, not because it prevented emergency entries, it didn't. Emergency aid exceptions still exist. The court's message was different. Just because police perform community safety functions does not give unlimited authority to enter private homes. That distinction matters a lot. Now imagine you're the subject of a welfare check. You open the door, you're fine, you're annoyed, maybe even angry. What should you do? First, stay calm. The officer doesn't know what you know. The officer only knows that somebody was concerned enough to call. Second, understand the goal. A welfare check is usually about confirming safety. The faster officers can reasonably determine you're okay, the faster the interaction often ends. Third, avoid turning a routine encounter into a confrontation. Many problems begin when emotions take over. Let's talk about the gray area, the area that creates confusion. The written law says homes receive strong constitutional protection. The real world says officers are often forced to make decisions with incomplete information and limited time. Those realities collide during welfare checks. Suppose officers hear screaming inside. Suppose they see someone collapse through a window. Suppose a caller reports a suicide attempt in progress. Most people would want officers to act immediately. The same constitutional system that protects privacy also recognizes emergencies, and that's why welfare checks sit in one of the most difficult spaces in American law. They happen before facts are fully known. They happen when uncertainty is highest. They happen when waiting can be dangerous. But acting too aggressively can also violate rights. That tension is everywhere. Here's something else nobody talks about. Many people fear welfare checks because they imagine police power. But the deeper issue is human vulnerability. A welfare check begins because somebody noticed your absence. Somebody worried. Somebody believed silence might mean trouble. That's the part people overlook. The entire system starts with concern, not suspicion, concern. Of course, concern can be mistaken. People misread situations. Families overreact. Neighbors jump to conclusions. Friends panic. That happens. But sometimes those same calls save lives. And that's why the legal system struggles to draw bright lines. The truth is uncomfortable. A welfare check exists because society has decided there are moments when doing nothing may be more dangerous than checking. So if a welfare check ever involves you, remember 3 things. If officers arrive and you're safe, communicate clearly and calmly. If someone you care about suddenly disappears or exhibits alarming behavior, don't assume somebody else will check on them. And if an emergency truly exists, minutes matter more than arguments. The biggest misunderstanding about welfare checks is believing they are about crime. Most are not. They are about uncertainty, an unanswered phone, a missed appointment, a worried parent, a frightened friend, a neighbor who notices something isn't right. And sometimes that simple concern becomes the difference between help arriving in time and help arriving too late. So here's the question. If you suddenly stopped answering calls for 3 days, who would be the first person to ask police to check on you? Think carefully before answering, because your answer says more about your life than any law ever could. And one final truth, the most powerful part of a welfare check is not the badge at the door. It's the person who cared enough to make the call. If this changed how you see something, there is more. Subscribe.
That's all for this video. For more information, watch these videos.